Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tamás here. Welcome to another episode of React Native. Today we are trying to turn a design like this into code like this. And when we are finished, it should look something like this. Yeah, that's right. We finally got the design, so we can continue with our slot machine app. If you are not familiar with the project, I released so far 2 videos. They are linked down below. If you don't want to miss the follow-up ones, hit the subscribe button. But yeah, let's start with the video. Alright, so it's actually half an hour later now because my Magic Mouse run out of battery, and it's one of those that you charge underneath. Not the finest moment of Johnny Ive, but yeah, we are back in business. So where are we at is, in the previous 2 episodes we made this up. We have 5 set of rails, 1 set of rail of 5, and you can spin it, it animates nicely, and if you have a line hit that's highly configurable, then it animates the winning line. And I'm just not lucky. But yeah, anyway, so what we are trying to achieve, so today we're gonna use Sketch and Zeppelin. So we have this design in Sketch. I'm not a huge fan of Zeppelin, but I'm using it for one and only thing, which is figuring out distance between elements. But mainly we're gonna use Sketch. So we have this design which is obviously heavily image based. Now when you have a design like this, you have to keep one very important thing in mind, which is responsiveness. So we are creating this app for not just smartphones but for tablets, and obviously even in smartphones there are so many different screen sizes. So the fact that this design is 667 by 375 points doesn't really mean anything. So you can do really like 2 things, maybe more. I'm just not aware of the rest, but some people use percentages. I personally don't like using percentages because you cannot use percentage attributes on certain things like font size and things like that. React Native is getting there with percentage based design, but it's not perfect yet. Instead of that, what I usually do is translate, basically set up a ratio between the 667 and 375 with the screen size, and use that as my unit. Now when it's more vertical design, so it's a portrait mode up, I usually use the height and the screen height as a basis of the ratio, but in this case it's a landscape one, so I'm going to use the width. So essentially you have to figure out which part of your design has a give. So if you look at this, we have this bottom panel and the top panel, which kind of needs to be in the same size, same ratio altogether. But this middle part, this can be scaled up and down. It doesn't really matter, because if this space is smaller in a given device, then we can change the real set width and just center it in this container. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So as I said, our base design is 667. So what we can do is go into our app, and remember we set up a constant on them. This is let me close all this. So we set up a set of constants, and what we can do is I'm gonna do a new constant called XR, which will stand for X ratio, horizontal ratio, and I'm gonna go dimensions.get screen.width divided by 667. So this will be our unit. Essentially, what I mean by this is whatever we see in the design in terms of numbers, we will multiply it by this ratio, and that will give us like an almost pixel perfect position and width and height. I'm saying almost pixel perfect because this is most likely gonna give you a floating point number, and React Native will kind of round that number, so it's not perfect, but it's something. So our current app is pretty messed up. It's quite ugly. So let me save this. Actually, let me just put it here, and let's start with a blank slate. So what do we have in the design is essentially 3 sections. We have the top bar, we have a bottom bar, and we have a main section. So what we need, so flex on our container, I'm gonna do flex direction column, and get rid of these essentially. Okay, so I'm gonna create a top bar, a main, and a bottom bar. Yeah, and I want a background image. Okay, so we have our container, and let's put this background blue as a background image on our app. In Sketch, you can define multiple asset sizes. So it's a good idea to export 1 to 3, because when it comes to releasing your app, it will give you a huge performance gain. Essentially, the Android and iOS won't have to like scale the image up and down depending on the screen size. So I'm gonna export this, and in remember we had like these images. I'm gonna create a background, and I'm just gonna require, how did I call this? Projects, bear with me. And in our assets there is images, and it's just called background blue. Right, so I'm gonna do background blue.png, and in our app I need to import image styles.background image source equals images, which I need to import from assets images.background, and resize mode equal stretch. Right, and our background image will be so width will be constants.max width, height will be constants.max height, and position absolute, because we want this image under everything else. Background blue, and I think that should be it. Yeah, okay, so we need to create 3 views. style equals styles dot top bar main and bottom bar. Okay, so let's see that. So if I go for our top nav top bar, I'm gonna rename it background top, and it's already has the three things. I don't want an SVG. Now one thing you have to note here is the height of this is 50, but it also has a shadow at the bottom, which is 3 pixels. So it will be essentially 53 pixels, units height. Okay, so I'm gonna export this and create a background top, and what we're gonna do here is, so our top bar will have a width of constants.max width, so it's a full width, and our height will be constants.xr times 53, right? And inside this we want a background top bar, background top, bar, and this needs to have a position absolute as well. Cool. So we have our top bar. Amazing. We have to repeat the same for the bottom bar. So let's see, the bottom bar has background bottom. I'm gonna call it background bottom. The designer doesn't really like my way of naming things, so here it's an eternal fight between him and I. Again, this has like inner shadows, which is fine, but it also has a outer shadow, I believe. What is it? One of these has a shadow of 3 pixels, so this 68 will become 71 essentially. But I'm gonna go export, and go with background bottom.png. Nice one. So in our app we can essentially copy paste this one, and the height will be 71, and we can do a background bottom bar with 71, and in here background bottom, and that's called correctly. And if I reload this, now you have the top and bottom, but they are not positioned correctly. So we have to define the main, which will have a width of max width, and it will have a height of constants max height minus 71 plus 53 times constants.xr. And if this is all correct, then we have these two bars perfectly positioned, right? So in theory, if I just move my real set back in the middle, in the main, wait a little bit. This kind of laid out correctly. It's slow, but we will take care of that in a moment. Okay, so back to this design. We want this spin button. Now, the spin button is has actually multiple states. So you have a octave. I actually don't like text to be on it. So button spin, I'm gonna call it, and I'm gonna call this one button spin pressed, and this one I'm gonna call button spin inactive. So we have a button with 3 states essentially. Let's export these. So if something is not exportable in in Sketch, you just hit make exportable and it's gonna be exportable. So let's make it 3 different sizes. Export. Same thing here. Make exportable. Export. Finally for the inactive. Export. Okay, so this is a button that's using images. There is no good components in React Native for this, so I'm gonna create a new file called touchable button.js. Okay, and I have the boilerplate for this. Okay. Touchable button. I'm not gonna need styles because we're gonna pass them in as prop. I'm gonna need view, text, and image. And I want a constructor props, super props, and I need the render but with 4 spaces as a tab. Alright, so what we need here is I'm gonna define a this.images. I'm gonna do this for preloading purposes. So for this component I'm gonna pass in the image name as a prop, and we're gonna pull it from the images.js. So I have an octave which will be coming from import images from assets images, and this will be images and this.props.image. So I'm gonna pass this in. I'm gonna have a pushed or pressed or whatever images this.props.image plus pressed. I think I called the file pushed, but well, pressed and this pushed, but let's go with it. And inactive, which will be images this.props.image plus inactive, right? And this.state equals status and active. Okay. I want a touchable without feedback here. Okay. Const status. So if a prop, I want to control the inactive state as a prop, because basically what's gonna happen is when you spin the reel, where is it? I hate Sketch. When you hit the spin button, the reel gonna spin, and you want to kind of disable that button. So for that we're gonna use a prop. So this dot props dot inactive, then the status should be inactive, otherwise this state dot status. Okay, and I want a touchable without feedback on press in equal this dot handle press in, on press out this dot handle press out. Yeah, and inside this I want a view style. I want to be able to pass in styles, so this dot props dot style, and I want justify content, so everything should be center aligned, align items. I could define this in this dot props dot style, but this is kind of a common styling, so why repeat ourselves? And image source equals this dot images status and style with this dot props dot style dot width height, and this dot props dot style height, and I want a position absolute, and resize mode, this dot props dot resize mode, or by default stretch, right? So if we pass in some funky resize mode, then it should be resize mode, otherwise stretch. Okay, cool. And maybe I want to pass in some sort of content, so const content equals this dot render content, render content equals is if this dot props dot, let's say we want to pass in a text, so in this case the text will be spin. If this dot props dot text return text style, this dot props dot text style, and this this dot props dot text. Cool. So we have to define these two. So pressing happens when you press the button. So if this dot props dot inactive, we should not do anything. So just return. Then we want to set this dot set state status pushed. And maybe from the outside we want to handle some sort of event, so this dot props dot on press, and then this dot props dot on press. This is just to check if the prop is sent in, right? Similarly, on press out we don't want to do anything if it's inactive, although it shouldn't happen, and this dot set state status active. So when you release the button, it should become active. Okay, so back to our images. I'm gonna call button spin, which have button spin inactive, button spin inactive, and we called the file pressed, but it actually should be pushed. Bam bam. Touchable button. No, it's actually should be cold pressed. Okay. Cool. So let's import that. Import touchable button from components touchable button, and we want to add it to our bottom bar. So I'm gonna do a touchable button. Bam bam. Touchable button with text equal spin. Text style. I'm gonna call it styles.button text. On press equal. Let's set up spin method. So we used to have this spin, which is this real set spin. So on press will be this dot spin. Style styles.button spin. And inactive, let's make it false for now. And image equal button spin. Right? Okay, so we have to create the button spin, and we called it button text. Okay, button. Okay, so how does our button spin looks like? This is where I am using Zeppelin, so this should be our button spin. So Zeppelin tells me it's 12 points from the top and 11 points from the right. Keep in mind that we had 3 points shadow, so it's probably gonna be 15-ish points. Okay, so position absolute, top 15 times constants dot xr. Actually, I used the other way around elsewhere, so I'm gonna use this. Right will be, what was it? 11 points. Constants xr times 11. Height will be constants dot xr times 138. Height, oh sorry, that was width. Height will be constants xr times 48. Okay, so for the text, let me make this layer visible. Though it was already visible, which is weird. Oh, because, yeah. Okay. So we are using Ubuntu Bolt. I'm gonna install this using the method I actually made a video about last week, so I'm not gonna explain it again. But Ubuntu Bolt is a Google font, so it's freely available. Linking it takes like 2 minutes. I'm gonna link the Medium article and video in the description. So we have a white. Is it white? It's kind of off-white text. Okay, so let's copy that. Color will be this. Okay, I want text, sorry, font size constants.xr. So I'm using the same multiplier to the font size, so this way it's gonna scale up. So here the font size, what is it? 24. 24, and I want align content center, justify content center, and yeah, that's about it. I have to install the Ubuntu font, but let's see how it's looking so far. Okay, I can spell height essentially. Okay. Cool. We have bottom, we have at the right position. Let's wait until these images load, and you can see that this works quite well. But for some reason our text is not showing up. Why would that be? So we use text style, button text, styles. We have a color, we have a font size. Touchable button. Oh, because we are not printing the content. Cool. Cool. Obviously, it's not the right right font, but we're gonna deal with that. Okay. Cool. So this design, as you can tell, so from this point it's gonna be rinse and repeat. So export the Moxbat button, export these buttons, export this button, this button, this button. It's gonna be fairly repetitive, so let's not do that now. Let's do the only different thing, which is the sound button. So this button is actually not a button that you press in and press out. It will be kind of a switch. So let's try to find the assets. Okay. So this one, let's make it exportable. I'm gonna call it button sound. Is this the pressed? Button sound and button sound pressed. Yeah. Let's export these after adding 2 more versions. Make exportable. Okay, so again, this is not a normal button. I'm gonna create a new component for it. I'm gonna call it Touchable Switch .js. Right, see, we're not gonna need a style sheet, we're not gonna need an image, we're gonna need import images from .assets images and call it touchable switch. Right, we're not gonna need the style. Okay, and constructor props super props. Okay, so touchable switch will be very similar. It's gonna have a same kind of images and state. It's not gonna have an inactive state. It's actually, let's call it active and inactive. Actually makes much more sense for this. Active. The status, I want to send it in as a prop. This props.status, and that's about it. I need a touchable without feedback. Again, wrap this whole thing into this. On press. I only care about on press out, so this and press out. Because this is a switch. I'm gonna have a view with a style equals this dot props dot style, and essentially I'm gonna have the same image, except this dot state dot status. Yeah, and in press out, all I have to do is this dot set state status. Actually, no. I want a new, let new status equals this dot state dot status equal active. Then make it inactive as active. Yeah, this dot set state status new status. It could be inline, but I want to reuse this. So this dot props dot on switch, and then this dot props dot on switch new status. So as a callback, essentially, if someone wants to use that. Okay, so we can import this. And what I'm gonna do is, so in this design, I have this home button, but I don't think I'm gonna use it, and I want this sound button up here. So I'm gonna make this whole credit screen a little bit narrower, and I'm gonna move this sound button to be in line with this info button, but at the top. Okay. So let's see what we can do about this. Okay. So obviously it's gonna be in the top bar, but first of all I need to create a button sound, which will be button sound, and button sound inactive, which I called, I'm horrible with naming, not sure if you noticed, but I think I called it button sound pressed. And here we can do a touchable switch with status active and style equal styles dot button sound. image, did I call it? Yeah, this props image will be button sound, and that's about it for now. So I can just create this button sound. Okay, so obviously we want a position absolute. Okay, so let's figure out where we want to put it. Okay, so this is the same size as the info button, which is lucky and good design. So I'm gonna do width constants.xr times 32. Same for height. And I want to apply the same, where is it? Same left margin essentially, so that will be 52. So left constants.xr times 52, and in top, if I go back here, so yeah, this design is a bit messed up. So I mean, this is why I hate Zeppelin, because sometimes, well, it could be the fault of Zeppelin or could be the fault of my designer, but I come across this kind of things all the time. So I'm just gonna guess like 8. Yeah, and let's see how it's looking. Yeah, 8 is a bit too much. So what's happening? Okay, so that's looking a bit tight, but looking okay. So if I click on it, it nicely switches, and okay. So from this point, it's not exactly rocket science to put this together. So it's essentially just rinse and repeat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pause the recording now, have some food because I'm hungry, and then I'm gonna live code it essentially, but I'm gonna speed up the video. If I come across with anything that's mildly interesting, I'm gonna stop the video and start talking, but otherwise, you know, you can just follow along. You can slow it down if you want, but yeah, see you in like a couple of minutes. Okay, slight change of plans. So I forgot to hit recording, and I actually spent like an hour or so coding this design, but let me just run you through it quickly. So basically it was rinse and repeat. So you see, like, I have touchable buttons, touchable switches, couple of text for the wing container, like this kind of thing. I have this level container. I have to deal with it later, but for now it's a pretty static thing. One thing I want to highlight is this home indicator. So iOS has this annoying thing when so this bar, and you cannot really hide it perfectly, but there is this library called React Native Home Indicator, which basically you just include the tag like here and add auto hidden. So it will try to do its best to hide the home indicator, but sometimes it will come back, but it's better than nothing. It's quite annoying. Yeah, we have this muxbat. I set up a couple of state variables. So I have a bet, credits, winnings, level, and spin button active. So I'm using the spin button active to disable the button while you are spinning, while it's spinning. As you can see, it turns gray. I hooked up, I added like a little check that you can spin if you don't have credits, and I have this change bet method, which essentially just loops through a set of bets that I defined in constants, and you know, when you hit like 1,000, it overflows and stuff like that. Pretty basic stuff, but I think the design looks extremely well. I tried it on iPad. It's not perfect yet, so we will have to add a couple of conditional code there to make it nice. The top and bottom bar looks perfect, but because of the iPad Pro height, this real set is pretty distorted, so we have to set it to some sort of constant at some point. But yeah, this is pretty much it. The code is messy, it needs some cleaning, but once I did it, I will make it available on my GitHub. But yeah, it was quite a long process to code this design, but it's gonna be much more enjoyable to work with this app going forward. If you like the content and you want to be notified about the next episodes of this series, or you're just curious about my other content, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. But yeah, that's it for today. Have a good one.